welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts and weekly contributors, Desmond. I am here with the one and only Mark Rogers, and we should have my partner Dre joining us shortly. Before we get started, please hit the like and subscribe button. Share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel. Also, while you're at it, join Mark's main channel, the Voice of College Football. Also, join his Discord where you can talk not only college football, but also NFL football 24/7, 365. Mark, how we doing today?
I'm good. I've only made it through a portion of these shows for the day, but we've got quite a few going on here. We started at 11 in the morning going live, and we've been pretty much live since then. So I'm going to get through these 3 team shows over the next 3 hours. Then we're going to come back and do an 8:30 call-in show with a bunch of media people jumping on for National Signing Day. So
I know for a lot of viewers, they would assume that your schedule and being live that often is tied to National Signing Day, but that's actually just a normal Wednesday for you.
Well,
like
it's to a certain extent. Yeah, that's not too much of a stretch, but it's a little more taxing today.
It's funny because Dre and I, when we're texting and on a regular basis, we ask each other like, when is Mark not live and when does he sleep? Because that is the question that is unanswered So it's quite the impressive marathon that you run on pretty much a regular basis and just about every day.
Yeah, we'll back off from that at some point. We hope to get there.
Nice. Well, we've a lot of things going on for Michigan. Obviously, they are prepping for the big game next week to play, or no, not next week. Next week? Yes, next week, next Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Okay, I'm looking at the calendar. I'm like, wait a minute, it's 10 days away. Math, all that good stuff. So yeah, so getting ready. They've got a big matchup against TCU. They are obviously one of the 4 college football playoff teams and a shot to go to the national championship, which is something that Michigan football hasn't done in quite a while. So that I trying to really put it into context is a bit difficult to do, but I mean a Michigan win next week would be, I mean, monumental is probably the understatement of the century. I mean, it'd be huge. It really would be. And I mean, and when you look at, Vegas and the odds and things of that nature, I mean, Michigan's favored in the game. So if you take that into account, I mean, Michigan has a real chance to be in the national championship.
Yeah, so with the expectancy that they're going to win this game, and I think people are fairly confident. Even outside of Michigan circles, it seems like most people just believe Michigan's going to win. I have not seen anybody pick TCU to win this game. That TCU is not being discarded to a certain extent. I don't hear many people saying, "Oh, it's a game that TCU doesn't even belong in, shouldn't even be there." But there's just a high confidence level in Michigan football that even though this seems like it's all positive, just I wonder how much air is going to be let out of the program if they don't win.
It would, I would imagine it would be a lot, like a lot, because when you think about it, especially when it comes to the college football playoff, more often than not, that the number 1 seed ends up with a number 4 team where you essentially look at it and a lot of times, let's put it that way, a lot of times it's a clear separation of 1 through 3 and then the 4th team.
Yeah.
So for Michigan to be the number 2 seed, and I want to make sure I give TCU their due respect, but I would say this is an advantageous matchup for Michigan. Like, I'm not saying TCU is the equivalent of a 4 seed, although my partner Dre would say that he is not a believer in TCU. But To me, it's just not often that you get in as the number two seed. You obviously match up with the three seed, and you're playing a team that that most people would just say that you're going to beat. So it's just such an advantageous position. So yes, I would say to lose that would be take air out of the sail, so to speak. I mean, I think it'd be really tough to kind of, I don't want to say bounce back from it, but to just swallow that loss would be difficult.
And the reason I framed it that way was because of the way you, and I think accurately, built up where Michigan is and what a breakthrough this is going to be and all of that. But that it's also been kind of assumed that they're going to be playing for a national championship.
Yep. And I was someone who I mean, before the season started, I didn't think there was any reason Michigan couldn't be in the national championship game. Now, I wasn't predicting a win or anything like that, but I just looked at it with you see what they did last year, historic season last year, and returning a lot of guys who have had experience, who had that experience. So I thought it was something that with breaks going their way that they could definitely be in the national championship. And the interesting part is I honestly I would say that outside of the Illinois game, you really I wouldn't say there were any 50-50, quote unquote ball bounces that went Michigan's way because I'm a firm believer that to win a national championship, you just have to have a couple breaks go your way. And I don't really feel like really any big breaks have gone Michigan's way. Not that, just everything's been perfect for them, but just kind of those weird things that happen in football, none of them have been a 50-50 kind of gamble where it's had to go Michigan's way for them to win. Like I said, the Illinois game is probably the only thing I would really point to. But outside of that, I mean, there's nothing that really comes to mind. I guess I would put it that way.
As it turned out, what did the Illinois game really do? If they would have lost that game and everything else would have remained the same, they still might be the 2 seed.
Well, and then what? Worst case, probably the three seed, and then maybe
Yeah,
TCU's the two seed. So I mean, it's six of one,
yeah,
half dozen of the
yeah.
other.
They'd have a different jersey on. But again,
Yeah, so it's a unique spot. It's a unique position for Michigan, but I just think the way that the philosophy that of how they want to play football, how they want to play the game, I think they do a terrific job of complementary football. They like to run the ball, keep the defense fresh, and when they need to make plays, I think the defense does a terrific job of doing that. I haven't seen reports, I haven't dug in too much on Mike Morris of him coming back healthy. It sounds like obviously Blake Corum is going to be out for the game, and you know most likely his Michigan careers is probably going to be over. But even when you look at the health, I mean Michigan has been overall as a team pretty healthy. You look at your starting quarterback, JJ hasn't missed any time. We had, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards have missed some time at different, points of the season, but it's just and maybe that's the Michigan break that they've had is health just in general. But I just it's a unique spot, and I'm fully expecting Michigan to come out and take care of business and win and be ready to play either Georgia or Ohio State.
if Georgia wins as expected, are you going to be giving Michigan much of a chance?
I will because of the style of play that Michigan plays with. And really, what I would look at is these two teams in my mind are very similar in their styles of play. I
Sure.
think I think they both want to run the football. I think they both have really good defenses. Now, when you start to break down kind of on a player by player basis, I think just in general, I think Georgia is the better team. So I would say that is I do think Georgia's the better team, but I don't think this Georgia team is as dominant of a team as they were last year, and obviously you don't have to do that to in order to win a national championship, right? You're just playing the teams from this year, but I do think Michigan would have a chance. I don't think it's would be something where Georgia just blows them out and just runs them off the field. I think it would be something where Georgia would need to play a pretty good game. I mean, B plus, A minus game. I don't think they can just kind of roll out of bed, play a C game, and think they're going to win a national championship. So I would give Michigan a shot at winning that game, but Michigan is going to have to play a really really good game and the mistake and just limiting mistakes, which they have done a really good job of so far this year.
I thought of this the other day, and this is not going to be a popular comment here, but that's fine. Because it's really a flimsy, frivolous thing to say. But obviously, the ultimate payback for Ohio State would be to play Michigan in the national championship game and win, obviously. In a strange way, though, it would be almost a more torturous way to see, and I don't expect this to happen, but Michigan to lose to TCU and Ohio State win the national championship over TCU and never, and I guess still maintain bragging rights winning that game, but that.
Oof, that would be difficult. I'm sure that would be difficult. And once Dre hops on, we'll definitely get his take on it. That would be tough because, like you said, I mean, we played that team, and I say we is talking as Michigan. We played that team. We beat them,
Yeah.
and they are the ones who make it to the playoff and also the national championship. That would be. Well, I would imagine for our Michigan fans and viewers that would be a really difficult thing to swallow. Because I would imagine that would be more difficult to swallow than even if it were Michigan Ohio State rematch for the national championship and lost that game. Because at least you could say we were there, we got to the national championship,
Yeah.
but to not, that would be tough. That I could imagine that would be really difficult. Oh, what are your as an Ohio State fan, do you give Ohio State a shot against Georgia?
Yeah, I think they've got a shot. Uh, the problem that I can't get around is that I am so sure of Georgia. I am so confident in who they are and who the team is that I'm going to see that night play. Like they are the surest thing to me in college football of, you know, I do not expect them to trip all over themselves. I expect them to be physical, to be laser focused, to be explosive, to be just everything. I think Ohio State's going to have to play just a lights out game. I don't think they have to play a perfect game because I don't think that exists, but they have to play a near perfect game. They have to play just at their peak, um, and that won't necessarily get it done. I think that'll just make it a great game. I think it's got the potential of being a great game, but it also has the potential if Ohio State doesn't show up in the right mindset and with the right intensity level, could turn out to be a blowout.
Yeah, I think the good and bad when it comes to teams that like to throw the ball and really we can paint a broad brush. Most of the teams like to do that now. I think Michigan and Georgia are probably in the minority as far as offensive philosophy. Um, but the thing is when you're playing a team like that, you can get yourself into trouble pretty quick. Just when you talk about, okay, let's say the coin toss, Georgia gets the ball first, long methodical drive, they score a touchdown, kick the ball off. Well, if Ohio State's offense isn't just clicking and in rhythm from the beginning, I mean it's not difficult to go 3 and out pretty quick with just, a miscommunication or a tip ball or, a sack, whatever the case may be, to now you're punting the ball. And if Georgia's still rolling, all of a sudden you look up and you're down, 10, 14 points in almost in kind of panic mode to where you have to play catch up. And now I'm not saying that's unique to Ohio State, but just when you're talking about a team like Georgia that really likes to run the ball, physicality, kind of ball control offense, if you're not at least taking some time off the clock or whatever the case may be and putting your defense right back on the field, it could spell some easy or early trouble, I would say.
Yeah, Ohio State may need to stay in the game for obvious reasons. The team that scores the most points does win the game, so you got to stay within range. But I think that more from a confidence standpoint, that I don't know if they can come back from being down 17-3 or something like that. I don't think they can get punched in the mouth early. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what the confidence level is, but I suspect that there's a fragile state to it.
Well, I think there's a bit of human nature just in that has to come into play for Ohio State. Essentially, I mean, the last time they were on the field, they lost, to your rival. So you start. I'm sure that would kind of creep into your mind if you do have, if you have a rough start and Georgia kind of gets rolling and gets a couple, 17-3, whatever the case may be. I would imagine it's human nature of like, man, are we, quite good? Are we that team that we thought we were going into the Michigan game, or are we more so that team that that played against Michigan? And I'm sure that's just a natural reaction to it because I mean that because we're humans and we kind of think the worst of things sometimes. So I wonder if that would start to creep into the psyche of
Yeah.
Ohio State and the team.
Yeah, we can look at some individual matchups that would favor Ohio State, but if you look at just every basic component of the game, they seem to all favor Georgia just in regards to, okay, physical style of play with enough explosive players and that potential to be just as good as Ohio State. They won a championship. They shouldn't lack in confidence. They know what it takes. They've done it. They're going to be less prone to being rattled in a tough situation, or if they get down versus Ohio State being, again, we don't know what's going on up here, but we're talking about what's likely. What's probable is that yeah, Georgia's just more equipped in just so many ways, and there's just more questions. I just have more questions about Ohio State, flat out, from a personnel standpoint and from a psyche standpoint.
Yeah, I think, and it may be not the right formula to win for Ohio State, but I think they need to be aggressive, go down the field, and I'm still someone who, there's a lot of fans of this young man because he is an incredible wide receiver. But Harrison Jr., I do not think I think there's maybe a handful of players that can guard him one on one. I think he is just fantastic. He's going to be someone to make a lot of money in the in the NFL. He's got obviously his dad did it for quite a long time, but I think for Ohio State they will need him to have a Jackson Smith and Jigba Rose Bowl esque performance to beat Georgia. I think he's a truly a balance of power. I think he's that good when it comes to just route running, getting open, hands. So I think he needs a lot of targets because I think he is terrific. And Ohio State has multiple guys who are really good, but I think he's the best wide receiver in college football.
I will say that there are some aspects of this game that remind me of 2014. Uh, Alabama was the best team. or considered to be the best team. Ohio State was a 4 seed. That Ohio State team, though, was playing well going into the game. They weren't coming off a Michigan game like they suffered. So it's not doesn't completely line up similar to that, but that Alabama team was actually a bigger favorite in that game than Georgia is in this one.
You never know. I mean, that's why we play the games, and they've got the prime time spot. Michigan has the 4 o'clock game, if I'm not mistaken, and um, yeah, Georgia and Ohio State kick off at 8 p.m. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I definitely see some parallels with that with this year versus that 2014 season. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. But I fully expect Michigan to be there, ready to rock and roll against whoever ends up winning that game. So if you had to call it now, Georgia, Ohio State, who would you lean towards? I guess
Okay.
because I
So
think you
this
do the
is not
pick.
the
So I'm
official prediction.
yes, I was gonna say I'm just leaning. Just who would you lean towards?
I think Georgia wins 41-27.
Okay. So I mean, it'd be not awful, but I mean, you're all Ohio State also is playing. I think we could say one of the two best teams in the country. I'd say most people would say it's either Georgia or Michigan. So
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I don't think that would be anything crazy. Um, so when it comes to Michigan TCU, so we obviously talked a little TCU and Michigan last week. It sounds like for a lot of fans, just in general, on the TCU offense, it sounds like Quentin Johnson is someone that has been talked about a lot. I would say him more so than even Max Duggan, the quarterback. So it sounds like he is going to be the focal point. I think just because of his big playability. But what are your thoughts as far as that matchup, Quentin Johnson versus the Michigan defenders?
I think that TCU has two potential places where they can take advantage. And I don't want to call them advantages or that they have strengths versus Michigan's weaknesses. I don't see it necessarily that way, that I know for sure that it's a strength versus a weakness. I got to see the players on the field, but I think TCU can make plays in Michigan's secondary. I think that they have playmakers to do that, and I also think that it's not so much that I have great confidence in TCU's secondary, although they do have the Thorpe Award winner, so he's supposed to be the best defensive back in college football. Um, but it's more so that Michigan may have to make some plays as a wide receiver core that I haven't seen them consistently make. So I think that TCU may have, and again, I wouldn't list this as a definite advantage, but I'm just curious to see TCU's wide receivers against Michigan's secondary and Michigan's wide receivers against TCU's secondary, because I think that TCU is going to have more to say about that than a lot of people expect. I think that they're either at least as good as Michigan or they might be better in those two matchups. And then the other one would be that I just don't think that Michigan's seen a quarterback who has the running ability of Max Duggan. They just haven't.
Yeah, and I think it'll be for TCU. I think it will be important for them to have some quarterback design runs because, like you said, I don't think Michigan has played a quarterback with his type of skill set. You could argue who's better, but as far as Max Duggan's skill set, I don't think Michigan has played a quarterback with his type of skill set. But the thing that I think will be important for Duggan will be just timing, like making sure he delivers the ball on time because with the Michigan pass rush, I think you can easily get yourself in trouble by just trying to extend plays, kind of playing the hero ball. They've got guys who can get after the passer with Oki and even Mason Graham. If Mike Morris comes back, so they definitely have guys who can get after him and it'll just be important, I think, for Duggan not to kind of just extending plays just to extend them and kind of running around that type of thing. I think you can easily get yourself into some trouble with the type of pass rush that Michigan has.
Yeah, and then of course Michigan's going to lean on TCU, and once Donovan Edwards has run at the TCU defense, regardless of how much success he may have had before 20 to 22 carries, once he gets into that range in the fourth quarter, TCU's got a undersized defense. They're quick. They what they lack in size and strength, they have in sideline to sideline speed. But if Michigan turns it into and gets their way offensively, and they either have a lead, especially if they've got a lead in the second half, then not that Michigan's going to shut it down and run the ball constantly, but they're certainly going to prefer to do that. And I think Donovan Edwards, just his combination of his size and speed beating on that defense, TCU is going to have to come with a mindset that a lot of the time, like one tackler is not going to bring this guy down, or one tackler is going to get dragged 7 yards, that they better just have a mindset that, man, we gotta run to the football. We got to have 3 hats there, 4 hats there. And even at that, in the fourth quarter, I'm not going to question TCU's effort or question their toughness, but if you're 30 or 40 pounds light along the defensive front and you keep getting pushed and beaten up, then that takes its toll, carry after carry after carry.
Absolutely. And Donovan Edwards himself is not a small man
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah.
having that O line, leaning on you and moving you out of the way, and then also trying to tackle number seven, that's a tough combination for a defense, and especially with Michigan's commitment to the run. Like there, for a fact that outside of just an absolute blowout, Donovan Edwards is not coming out of this game with anything less than, I would say, probably 23, 24 carries. So that the commitment to the run game is definitely going to be there. Um, so that'll definitely be a tall task for the TCU defense, is just that front six, front seven being able to hold up to Michigan's back-to-back Joe Moore Award winners. So that'll be pretty interesting. That'll be pretty interesting.
So yeah, if I'm Michigan, I'm not running away from TCU. I'm not trying to, not that you don't mix it up and do some different things, but the bulk of my carries are going to be right at them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It you're bigger, so yeah, just go.
Yeah.
Typically that I think, what is the equation? If they're faster east and west, then you run right at them, and if they're
Mhm.
bigger or something like that, you run more east and west. But yeah, nonetheless, I would
Yeah.
I would go majority of the runs right at them. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's so much easier to tackle a guy when you're trying to chase him down. Like if Michigan's running wide and TCU's got edge rushers and outside linebackers tracking guys down, they're so much easier to wrap up a tackle than it is when guys are just coming right at you.
Absolutely. What type of impact do you foresee JJ McCarthy having in this game on next Saturday?
I don't say this is a knock to Michigan or to him in any such way, but uh, the the less impact he has, the better. But he's the quarterback, so he's going to have a large impact on the game. He's going to be needed. Um, Michigan's not going to run for 15 yards a carry and never have to throw the ball. So he's going to be needed. And what makes it really difficult on TCU is that, he's a running threat as well. So, um, we think about Duggan against the Michigan defense, making it tough on them. But, TCU is going to have to count for J.J. McCarthy, who's, I'm going to guess, would beat Max Duggan in a foot race. So, um, but I'm just basically stating that if JJ McCarthy puts up the numbers that he did against, let's say, Purdue, which was in the neighborhood of 11 of 17 for 130 yards, and that's because he wasn't needed, then all is good. This game's 41-20, and they had it salted away, and it worked to plan. But and then if they need him and he spins it for 300 and hits 25 to 35, and that's all good too. They just needed to rely on him because either TCU scored more than anticipated or the running game wasn't quite as effective as anticipated. They just if they need him to throw 35 or 40 times, there is a possibility that he's not going to be completely on it. And or TCU, they've got a top 15 pass efficiency defense that he's 22 of 40 and doesn't have the best day. And it's
and I would agree with you that the less impact the better for JJ, and it kind of same thing that you echoed. It's not saying that he's not good or
yeah,
not, talented. He's all of those things, but I just think for Michigan, what they want to do is to run the football and to, I mean, the Jim Harbaugh special. Like, he loves running the football, kind of power football. So I would say that the less JJ has to do, the better. I think a big key for, maybe not a big key, but one thing that I would do if I were calling plays at Michigan is to get an early quarterback run for JJ, to kind of just get him, number one, get him a little, warmed up, get him into the game a little bit, and then also just to have something else for TCU to have to think about and have to be aware of,
yeah,
to keep an eye on the quarterback, and maybe that opens up, a passing lane later on in the game where, a linebacker doesn't get as deep because, well, I got to be close enough if, number nine scrambles. So just something like that. But yeah, I would agree overall. The more you put on the run game, and the more success they have, I think the better for Michigan. So
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how they use JJ in the game, and what type of impact he has.
Going back to an earlier point, looking at both games as being similar in this way, that Georgia and Michigan are similar teams. It's almost like the other game. How much of an impact does CJ Stroud need to have on this game? Through the roof. How much of an impact does Stetson Bennett have to have on this game? I don't know. He may not have to have much impact. He might go 13 for 18 and they run for 250 yards and they win, and he did his job and he hit the open guys when he had to on 3rd and 7. But besides that, not much of an impact. Or it could be a shootout and Stetson Bennett has to have a big impact, and maybe he comes through with a great game, or maybe he doesn't. Where the same thing here. How much of an impact does Max Duggan have to have on the game? He has to have
Hmm.
a big impact in the game. JJ McCarthy, they could win and him not have much of an impact, just like the Purdue game, let's say. Uh,
Yeah, I absolutely. It's interesting, and I guess until we started talking about it, I didn't see many of the parallels with this game with the with the Georgia Ohio State game. But I would definitely agree that that is something that they have done a. There's just a lot of similarities, and I think storylines that are pretty consistent with both games. The well, one of the things that happened right before we hopped on, and we can kind of switch gears to National Signing Day. From what I have gathered, it looks like they kind of wait until everything has been signed, sealed, and delivered before they kind of talk about just different rankings and things of that nature. But one of the players, and actually Michigan man Jason put it on right before we hopped on, was four-star corner Jair Hill commits to Michigan. From everything I've seen, he's a really talented player. But the reason I bring it up is just obviously there's a lot going on with National Signing Day and guys sending in their letters of intent, all that good stuff. And for Michigan, I'm I'm wondering and I'm curious on where they will land when essentially it's all said and done. I think they've done a good job actually in the transfer portal of getting a couple guys, committed to Michigan, which we didn't see a lot of that last year. Obviously you had the center, grad transfer came Olu. He's done a terrific job. Um, so Michigan, I think, has been more active in the transfer portal this year, and more so than I even thought they would be. I mean, I thought there would be a couple guys that they would, go in the portal to get, and they've done a terrific job. And this was something before we got rolling in the season that I think there was a decent amount of concern with because that just didn't seem to be Jim Harbaugh's his strategy when it comes to getting guys. And I think he's done a really good job in these last 2 years of just of being flexible and adapting to the environment and the climate of college football that we're in. I think he's done a terrific job, and I can't commend him enough because I was someone that, before that, 2021 season started, I was very critical of him. So, in the same token and same breath that I was critical, I think he's done a terrific job these last couple years in just being fluid, being flexible, and just adapting to the times.
Yeah, he comes across as a guy, and just knowing his background and what he's accomplished. And I think for some people, not everyone, but for some people, the more accomplished you are, the more success you have, it's understandable that the less you would be open to changing or having someone tell you what to do or listening to advice or looking at the landscape of whatever you're dealing with, whatever industry, and determining, okay, I got to change, I got to be flexible. It's understandable. Well, maybe it was a good thing he was kind of hit in the mouth with that 2020 season and other things that were going on, and Ohio State beating him like a drum every year and all that. That caused him to make some changes. Still do what he does best and still maintain his same values, if that's what you want to call it, in regards to football approach. But just to look at this transfer portal, I don't know how much of this was that they assessed their roster and what they need based on what they're anticipating losing, and how much of it was just that they liked these players. I got to think that just like an NFL draft, it's a pretty similar process to equating our needs versus, hey, we're stacked at this position, but hey, if we can go get this guy, let's go get him because he makes us so much better. But it has a lot to do with need. And man, I looked a little bit into some of these players along the offensive and defensive front, and posted a couple videos. And I think they really helped themselves out with some pretty strong players through the transfer portal. So yeah, I didn't see that being a major component of Jim Harbaugh's strategy, but yeah, you got to credit them for going after that. When it comes to traditional recruiting, you know, I can't exactly answer my own question, but I don't know when Michigan will ever catch Ohio State in recruiting. I don't.
It yeah, I mean it's interesting when you see because we even talked about it after last season how historic of a season that Michigan had, and they had a good recruiting a good recruiting class. It wasn't top three or top four or anything like that. I think they might have been in either the teens if I'm not mistaken. So nothing to sneeze at, but I wondered last year if part of that was, Jim kind of entertaining the Minnesota Vikings job and if that was something that kind of turned some players off, so to speak. I'm still not quite sure of that. I don't know. But yeah, kind of same thing. I just wonder if it's just you get into a certain groove or almost like the machine is just rolling when it comes to Ohio State. Because you look at Alabama, the same way. I mean, as for a team that lost two games this season, not going to the playoff, still with the number one class or seeming, I think all signs pointed to that. But I really don't know. I think it's difficult to make that jump. And Ohio State's doing a terrific job of recruiting. I mean, I know some of the Ohio State fans are critical of Ryan Day with the two Michigan losses the last 2 years, but when it comes to the recruiting and keeping that standard that Urban Meyer did a terrific job of getting to, he's done a terrific job there. So I'm with you. I'm not quite sure, and maybe it's just a different strategy. I mean, I'm not saying Jim Harbaugh doesn't want all of the five stars because every coach does, but they just seem to make it work.
Yeah, I'll have to go through year to year and see because it went through my head. Okay, I'm going to go through year to year and see when was the last time Michigan had a higher ranked class than Ohio State. I just arbitrarily picked a year. I went just 10 years back and I went to 2013 and Michigan was at number 4 and I went, oh, okay, maybe this is the year, but Ohio State was number 2. So I don't know what year that was, but it's been a long time since they had a higher ranked class.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that how that continues to go, and especially if the rivalry continues with Michigan having as much success as they had these past two seasons. So that'll be yeah, I'm not sure, and I don't know if anyone has the has the answer to that question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's that is interesting. I'm not quite sure. Um, yeah, I was gonna say, is there anything else you wanted to cover? I know we've got kind of Christmas coming up, so definitely want to wish everybody a happy holidays, Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. But yeah, any other Michigan kind of topics you wanted to dive into? Well, I think we might have lost my partner Dre today, but all good. I'm sure he'll be here next week, and he'll definitely be here, post game for Michigan.
I don't think we've got anything else. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Where can our viewers who wanna follow you as far
Hmm.
as live today on National Signing Day? What channel are you headed to
Okay,
after this?
okay. So here's the deal at 6 o'clock. So here in just a few minutes, we'll be on the Florida State channel for the Florida State Seminole show that we do each and every Wednesday for an hour. And then at 7 o'clock, we've got our Miami show, and Miami's killing it in recruiting. So they've got the third ranked class right now in the country. And then at 8:30, I'm going to jump on live on the main channel. And we're going to run through as many media people as can jump on to kind of run down their particular classes. And we've already done TCU, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Oregon, LSU, Kentucky. We got folks coming on from North Carolina, North Carolina State, Wake, South Carolina, Clemson, uh, Oklahoma, Iowa, Alabama, Nebraska. So, yeah, for as long as we need to stay on to get all those people through to give their National Signing Day reports, and we'll be on tonight at 8:30 Eastern on the main channel.
Got it. So 6 p.m. Coming up soon is Florida State, 7 p.m. Miami, 8:30 the main channel, the voice of college football right here on YouTube. All right. Well, Mark, thanks. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. We will be back here next week, 5 p.m. game week for the Michigan Wolverines against the TCU Horned Frogs. Um, Always appreciate it. And once again, happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas. And thank you guys for just being with us and hanging with us all season. It's unfortunately and sadly coming to an end here in the next few weeks, but just wanted to thank all of our viewers and yeah, just thank y'all for being here. So appreciate it. And Mark, always a pleasure. Take care and have a good day.
Thanks, Des. Appreciate it.
Thanks.